snap! There's the kick! It's gone! Oh my gosh! The kick is gone!
Boston Sports Nerds present Joe's Fantasy Field Goal.
What's up, guys? We are in the playoff. Well, some of you are in the playoffs. I have a couple leagues where the playoffs started this week. Most people, the playoffs will start next week if you're in a standard 4-team playoff format. If anything more than 4 teams, I think the playoffs start this week now. But so it's either the last week of the regular season or the first week of the playoffs, depending how your league is set up. So we are gonna do some quarterback streamers, some defensive streamers, some waiver wire wonders, and I'm not gonna run through the games this week. Because I have a lot of streamers, and I'll run through a lot of their games then. Most of these games, I mean, you guys, we're in the playoffs. It just, you know who I like, what defenses are bad. It's pointless for me to keep running through these games. I do have some good waiver wire wonders this week, actually. A little bit of news: Gronk was suspended. He's going to be out 1 game. So, most likely. He's going to appeal it. I don't think it's going to matter. I think they're going to suspend him a game. He should be suspended a game. But Gronk's going to be out 1 game. So I have some tight ends in here that you can pick up that you can plug in while Gronk's out. And they should be available, especially 1. There's a lot of quarterbacks that are stream-worthy this week. A lot of good matchups of, 5 defenses that are stream-worthy. So, it's a good week. And like I said, I'm not gonna run through the games because it's the fucking playoffs, or it's about to be the playoffs. And I have confidence in your start-sit decisions. I do have a tip though before we get into any of that stuff for start sit. Since I won't go over games, I'll give a tip. And I gave this tip last week actually, and that is that if you are, let's say you're the 6th seed, right? Let's say you're the 4th seed in the playoffs, and you're going up against the best team in the league. Play the guys that have the potential to go off for a big game. Because if you lose, you're out of the playoffs. So you might as well go all in and try and play guys that may be a little bit of high risk, but with a huge reward. If you're in a matchup like that, if you're in like the 2-3 matchup, maybe you try and play it safe and hope the other guy kind of fucks up. But in the 1-4 matchup, if you're the 4 seed and you're projected to lose, why not throw in a flyer, or a 2, or 3? Guys that are big, high risk, high reward kind of guys. Like Nelson Aguilar had a big game last week. He's a high risk, high reward guy. You know what I mean? Even Rex Burkhead I think he's safer than Nelson Aguilar, but he's a guy who can have huge upside and could potentially have very bad games, but he tends to he has been tending to have decent games. But we'll get right into the quarterback and defensive streams to kick the show off now.
Islands in the stream, that is what we are. No one in between. How can we be wrong?
Alright, so first on the quarterback stream list is Brent Hundley. He is playing at Cleveland. Obviously, you play the quarterback that plays the Browns, because there's a reason the Browns are 0-12 at this point. So Brett Hundley, he's flashed some good games. He's flashed some ugly games, but the ugly games tend to be against good defenses. And I've seen him beat up on bad defenses, and Cleveland is a bad defense. So I'm expecting Brett Hundley to be just fine as a streaming option this week. That's probably a deeper league streaming option, but you can start him with confidence, I think. Next on the list is Jameis Winston. He's home versus the Lions. Lions defense is just okay. I mean, they started off the season hot with all those turnovers, but they've calmed back down. They're much more Lions-y than they were at the start of the year. Jameis Winston is back, and he makes some awful decisions with the ball, but against a bad defense, I think he can get the job done. And he's at home. So, I like some of these other guys as better streams. But I think Jimmy G is safe. Next, we have Alex Smith. He's home against the Raiders. And he is coming off a huge week. He got me 50 points in one of my leagues. It's like 366 and 4 touchdowns or something like that. And I know Andy Reid handed over play calling after they've had like 3 disastrous offensive weeks in a row. And it seems to have sparked Alex Smith again. So hopefully, against a weak Raiders defense, we see a similar Alex Smith to what we saw in the start of the year and then what we saw last week. And I'm kind of counting on that, especially since the Raiders defense, like I said, is so weak. So I like Alex Smith. He's probably one of my favorite streamers this week, and he should be available, but he's also going to be what I imagine is highly sought after a 50-point week. But a lot of people probably dropped him after those dismal performances the last 2. Next on the list is my man, the only player I root for that's not a Patriot anymore, and that is Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo looked damn good in his debut. He didn't throw any touchdowns, which is not good for fantasy, and he threw a pick that wasn't his fault. The ball got ripped away from the receiver. So all of those things are not good for fantasy, but I think he only had like 7 or 8 incompletions, and he threw for 300-something yards. And I think the Bears' defense might actually be better than Houston's defense with all the injuries that Houston has at this point. So I like Jimmy Garoppolo against Houston this week. They are playing in Houston, so that's a little and maybe this is just me being completely biased because of my love affair with Jimmy Garoppolo. But I'd be willing to start him, and I might in some of these leagues that I'm already out just for fun, just so I can root him on. But I like Jimmy Garoppolo versus Houston. Next on the list, we have Andy Dalton versus the Bears. Like I said, the Bears' defense is actually okay. I just don't think they'll be able to stop Andy Dalton and A.J. Green, really. And Dalton is a quarterback who's been on and off the waiver wire for most of the year for a lot of one-quarterback leagues. And hopefully he's there. He should be there. The Steelers-Cincinnati game's on right now. I don't know. Last I checked, Cincinnati was winning 10-0. Also, thoughts and prayers, Ryan Shazier. He took a linebacker for the Steelers. He hit the guy, but he cracked his neck or his back injury or something, and it didn't look like he was moving his legs, which is a terrible, terrible thing. So, thoughts and prayers, T's and P's for Ryan Shazier. But back to Andy Dalton. He's a safe stream, very safe stream against the Bears. So if you're the 1 seed and you've been streaming quarterbacks all year, I think Andy Dalton versus the Bears is a very safe play. If you don't have anything better, he might not put up a huge week, but I don't think he has a very low floor like some of these other guys could have. Next is Blaine Gabbert versus the Titans. I recommended Blaine Gabbert last week, I think, actually. And, didn't put my phone on silent. I recommended Blaine Gabbert last week, and he performed pretty shitty this week. But, I think he'll bounce back. He did look really good against the Jaguars, but he looked bad this week. I can't remember who Arizona took on. but they're playing the Titans. This is the main reason why Gabbert's on the list, is they're playing the Titans, and the Titans' defense is really, really bad. And I think he can get the job done. Him and Brett Hundley and probably Jimmy Garoppolo to an extent are all deeper league quarterbacks. If you're in a 12, 14 man single quarterback league, then deep waiver wire quarterbacks, Jimmy Garoppolo, Brett Hundley, Blaine Gabbert, all decent starts. The last on the list is Josh McCown. He's playing Denver, and I keep saying it, I'm expecting Denver's defense to finally get it, but they just aren't. So, we're starting to see a trend, follow the trend, and play Josh McCown, because Denver just got torched by Miami and Jay Cutler, and I think they are a much worse team than the Jets are this year. So I'm saying fire up Josh McCown at Denver. That being said, they did not have Aqib Talib. I just thought about that. It doesn't matter. They were giving up 50 points without Aqib Talib. They gave up 50, 40, 35 to the 50 to the fucking Eagles, 40 to the Pats, 35 to the Dolphins. They gave up 20 something to the Raiders. They just haven't been that good on defense. So I would feel fine playing Josh McCown, although I'd probably play most of these other guys before him if possible. That's it for quarterbacks. For the defensive streams, first on the list is the New York Jets at Denver. Denver's quarterback situation has been a fucking shit show. Trevor Siemian looked awful for the Denver Broncos, but it's fucking awesome for any defense that gets to play him, because he's just a fucking turnover machine, and all the quarterbacks behind him aren't any better. So any defense that gets to play Denver's offense is now like Cleveland Browns status of bad. So I'm playing any defense that plays Denver, especially in the playoffs, and the Jets have a pretty good defense to start, and they get to play a bad Denver team. This is in Denver, which is, not the perfect matchup, but I'm definitely willing to take this matchup as a defensive stream. Next on the list, we have Dallas at the Giants. The Giants, another team, quarterback positions in disarray. Now they're saying Eli might start again. If he doesn't start, I like it even more. If Eli starts, I'll still take it. Dallas' defense isn't very good, but I think they're a safe play against the Giants, because the Giants really haven't put up a lot of points all year. So their floor is good, and I think they have pretty good upside, especially if Eli is not playing. Geno or the rookie, whose name I can't think of right now, is playing, Davis Webb. Or if Geno or the rookie are playing, then I really like Dallas' defense against the Giants. Next, we have Buffalo versus the Colts. I think Buffalo's defense actually is pretty good. They held the Pats in check for some of that game. And if you can hold the Pats in check, you can hold the Jacoby Brissett-led Colts in check. And it's at home in Buffalo. I like in the elements. The Colts are a dome team. I like this matchup a lot, and I think Buffalo will get it done. Next, we have Green Bay at Cleveland. This is just, you play the team that's playing Cleveland, just like you play the team that's playing Denver. Cleveland's been has had turnover problems all year. It's not going to change, even though Green Bay's defense is kind of shitty. They'll get the job done against Cleveland, because everyone gets the job done against Cleveland. So I would go out, I would try and get the Jets defense or Cleveland's. I'd probably rank this Jets defense, then Green Bay, then Buffalo, then New England is at Miami. New England has just been, I think they're a top 10 defense in points over the last however many weeks, or they've averaged out to a top 10 defense. They've just been ridiculous, not giving up any points. Miami's team in general isn't very good, and I think New England will really be able to shut them down. They did last time they played them. They'll do it just fine just now. So I would probably rank this. I would probably take the Jets defense first, then Green Bay, then Buffalo versus the Colts, then New England at Miami, then Dallas at the Giants. As from defenses I like the most to defenses I like the least. But I like all of these defenses. I mean, I don't think you can go wrong with any one of them. And now we'll move on. With the yawns, Jesus. Yeah, we'll move on to a new segment called The Yawns. No, we're going to move on now to Waiver Wire Wonders.
And I wonder if you know the wonder of it all.
Alright, first on the list for Waiver Wire Wonders is Peyton Barber. If Peyton Barber is I think it's his second year in the league. He is a young running back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And he played this week with Doug Martin out. And they decided to go with him over Jacquizz Rodgers. And the season is pretty much over for the Buccaneers. And I think they plan to move on from Doug Martin at the end of the year. If they do plan that, I think you might see a scenario where Peyton Barber plays over Doug Martin for the rest of the year because they plan on keeping Peyton Barber and not Doug Martin. And I think you should roster Peyton Barber in case that, just as a precaution in case that might happen. Because having a starting running back this late in the year on your bench can be a huge advantage in the playoffs. And Peyton Barber performed good. He had over 100 yards on the ground. He had 40 yards receiving, I believe. And he looked really, really good, really strong out there. They leaned on him a lot. And if he's going to get the starting role for the rest of the year, I think he's worth rostering. And he is owned currently in 1.5% of leagues. So, go out there and try and make some room on your bench unless your bench is stacked. I mean, obviously, don't just cut a good person for Peyton Barber, but if you have some room you can make on your bench for a guy who could potentially be the starting running back, then, go make that room. Next on the list is kind of the same situation. It is Mike Davis in Seattle. He is a running back, and he seems to have leaped Eddie Lacy and Thomas Rawls as the primary 1 and 2 down guy, and McKissick is still there, but he is a third down back. Mike Davis can also catch the ball out of the backfield, but he's got the first and second down role more locked up than McKissick does. And this is another scenario where you might be looking at a guy who could potentially be the starting running back for a pretty good Seattle Seahawks team, and he was pretty good in the game last night, or on Sunday. I think he had 70 yards rushing. I don't know off the top of my head, but he's only owned in 2.9% of leagues, and like I said, I prefer Peyton Barber over Mike Davis, but if you don't get Peyton Barber, Mike Davis is worth rostering just because the off shot that he becomes a starting running back and you can play him in the playoffs. Next on the list is a tight end that everyone should have now that his quarterback is back. His ownage percentage is a little high for what I normally do with Waiver Wire Wonders, which is a 50% owned. He's currently 57% owned. But if you are a Gronk owner, or you're just weak at tight end, go out there and see if Cameron Brate is on the waiver wire, because Jameis Winston loves Cameron Brate, and he loved Cameron Brate the whole beginning of the year, and then Jameis Winston got hurt. Cameron Brate fell out of favor with Ryan Fitzpatrick, and he wasn't really throwing to him, and then Jameis Winston came back this week, and the first thing he did was throw to Cameron Brate. Cameron Brate put up 15 fantasy points in a standard league, more in a PPR, he is worth rostering if he's available. Like I said, he's owned in 57.3%, which means you got like 43% of leagues where he's available. Go check and see if you're one of that 43%, especially if you're a Gronk owner or if you're weak at tight end. Next on the list is another tight end, and that is Trey Burton. Trey Burton is the backup tight end for the Philadelphia Eagles. Zach Ertz, I believe, got a concussion, and there's a chance he might miss this next week. If Ertz is out, grab Trey Burton. He had 4 receptions for 40 yards in the game last night, or on Sunday, and he started playing in the third quarter after Ertz went down with a concussion. So in very limited work, he got 4 receptions for 40-something yards. And with a full game, I would imagine that he produces like Zach Ertz light level of production, and that is very good production because Zach Ertz has been very good. He is only owned in a whopping 1.2% of leagues, so he is definitely available everywhere you go. If Zach Ertz is out, and you are the Gronk owner, or you're very weak at tight end and you need to start for just 1 week, because it's only going to be 1 week, Trey Burton is not a long-term solution at tight end. But while Zach Ertz is out, if you need a 1-week spot start because Gronk is out on suspension, or because you're just weak at tight end, Trey Burton is a great 1-week plug-and-play 1.2% tight end, owned tight end, who has huge Zach Ertz levels of upside, and I think a safe floor targets wise, in an Eagles offense that seems to really like the tight end. My last guy on the waiver wire wonder, and this guy is still owned in 15.2% of leagues, and this is kind of a victory lap for me because I've been pumping this guy with the caveat that as soon as Jimmy Garoppolo becomes quarterback, this guy will be worth owning. And let me see. I have some of my waiver wire wonders in front of me. This isn't dated, but Marquise Goodwin's on here. Marquise Goodwin's on this one. Marquise Goodwin's on this one. So it's like the last 4 weeks I've been telling you guys to grab Marquise Goodwin. Because if Jimmy Garoppolo becomes the quarterback of the 49ers, Marquise Goodwin will be a great pickup. And what happened? Jimmy Garoppolo became the quarterback of the 49ers. He started this week against the Bears. And what did Marquise Goodwin do in his game? Oh, he only had 8 receptions for 100 yards. If you're in a PPR league, 8 receptions for 100 yards? That's fucking 18 points. Out of a San Francisco 49ers receiver who's 15.2% owned. With Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback, Marquise Goodwin is absolutely worth owning. He's the best wide receiver on that team. He is the primary guy, especially with Pierre Garçon down. And I've been trying to tell you guys this for weeks. Jimmy Garoppolo is finally starting. He's still only 15.2% owned, but this is probably your last chance at Marquise Goodwin before he's in the owned club. Before I can't put him in waiver wire wonders anymore. And he's worth rostering for the playoffs. They play Houston this week. They play... I don't have their schedule in front of me, but I know they end the season with the Rams, or as one of their last 2 games. But I know they play Houston this week, and that's a good matchup. So you want Marquise Goodwin at least for this week, and then probably the first round of the playoffs, and then... I'd probably even play him against the Rams. I don't know if there's they play Jacksonville one of these weeks. I don't know if I would play him against Jacksonville. But the Rams I'd probably be willing to play him against. So 1 week out of all of these playoff weeks, you can get a depth receiver that's a worthy start. And he's only 15.2% owned. Spend that waiver claim. Spend some fab. Pick up Marquise Goodwin for your playoff run. He's going to be involved in the offense, and that's all you can ask for this late in the season, is a guy who's going to be consistently involved in the offense as long as Garoppolo is quarterback. Now, if they make a sudden switch back to C.J. Beathard, take all this information I just gave you and throw it in the fucking trash. But if they don't make the sudden switch back, if they keep Garoppolo at quarterback, then Marquise Goodwin needs to be on the roster. Needs to be on the roster. And that's it. I'm not going to go over the games. Here's the thing. We're coming to a close with Joe's Fantasy Field Goal. I think we have this week. Next week is definitely the first round of the playoffs. And then, because this is what, week 14? I think this is week 14. Next week's obviously week 15. You have week 16, which is probably the real last week. I will do one for week 17. Because that's some people, which you should never do. Some people have fantasy seasons that go into week 17. I am hugely against that. But some people do. And I will be here to give you advice to navigate through the weird kind of week that week 17 is, with people sitting people and shit like that. And that'll be my last week for Joe's Fantasy Field Goal. We're retiring the show, at least till next year. Probably not till like August or something when Joe's Fantasy Field Goal will come back. I might take a couple weeks off and try and figure out what I want to do for my next show. But this late in the season, week 17, I'll probably tell you guys start sit, because that'll be an interesting week, seeing what teams do. But the playoffs, I don't think I have to go over every single matchup with you guys and tell you who to play and who not to play. You should be able to look at your matchups and see who the good matchups are, who the bad matchups are. I mean, don't play receivers against Jacksonville. You know what I mean? Don't play running backs against Baltimore. Avoid matchups against good defenses unless they are very highly thought of players. Like, obviously you play Antonio Brown every week. Obviously you play Tom Brady every week. Obviously you play Rob Gronkowski every week he's healthy or not suspended. Obviously you play, fucking Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara is an every week start. You don't need me to tell you that. You should just be playing him because he's been unbelievable. You want to avoid the good defenses and go play your guys that have good matchups, except for your studs. Listen to my waiver wire wonders. Go pick them up. Add some depth for your playoffs. Go pick up Rex Burkhead if he's not owned yet, by the way. Last week he was 43.7. I didn't check his ownage this week. I thought for sure he'd have to be over that by now, but he might not have been. Go pick up Rex Burkhead if he's available. And he's start worthy. Rex Burkhead is start worthy for sure. But add some of the depth with my waiver wire wonders to your playoff roster, and I'm gonna always give you guys streamers, which will always help you with your quarterback and your defenses, lock those positions down. But I think for your players on your roster, you should have, through the entire year of me giving you fantasy advice against who not to play against who and blah blah blah, you should know by now what teams or what players will perform for you and what players won't, and what matchups are good for you and what matchups aren't. And I have confidence in you guys doing that. And I have confidence that we can win some fantasy championships together. I know I don't think I'm mathematically eliminated in any of my leagues yet. Some leagues I'm, holding on by a prayer. I need this guy to lose and me to win and this and this. In some leagues I'm already punched my ticket for the playoffs. But here's to hoping that you guys succeed this week, succeed in making the playoffs, succeed in the first round of the playoffs, whatever your situation is, and win a fantasy championship with all your lovely advice from Joe's Fantasy Field Goal. And I'll see you guys next week.